for whatever reason, the whole night, even from the time he called me on the phone, it was like I had a guard up the whole night. I didn't feel comfortable. I felt like...
Those were your instincts.
Yeah.
That was your instinct.
They were. We were on the bed, and he starts, like, kissing on me and trying to rub on me in front of his friends, and I'm telling him, like, your friends are sitting here watching.
So what are the friends doing? Are they, like, pretending to watch TV, or they're just kind of sitting there waiting for something to happen?
Initially, they were just sitting on the opposite side of the bed, just watching TV or doing whatever. I couldn't really tell because I was sitting on the bed, so my back was to them.
To them, okay.
But eventually, at a certain point, he started to become more aggressive, and they started touching on me. I could feel them touching my back, touching my shoulders. And
so it's 4 of them?
It's 3 of them and myself.
Okay.
So they're, telling me, calm down, it's not a big deal, why are you acting like this? A lot of things to kind of make me go along with it. Mm. So at a certain point, the friend who invited me, or the cousin or whatever, who invited me is down between my legs, and he like just pulls my pants down and pulls my dick out, puts my dick in his mouth, and he starts like trying to suck my dick pretty much. Not trying to, so he had my dick in his mouth.
This podcast was brought to you by Envision Interiors Painting Company. Visit them at www.envisioninteriors.com. That's the letter N, visioninteriors.com. This is very personal work for me.
Politics.
I believe I was called to tell my story, use my voice, be a voice for the community. To speak to and for a community of people that's been ignored, denied, overlooked.
Religion.
This is my life's work.
Religion.
I want to use words to uplift, heal, inspire, encourage.
Do something different. Every Monday at 10.
Good day, thinkers, thought leaders, progressives, and dreamers. I'm Craig, the writer Stewart, and this is So Much to Say. These are my thoughts in my voice on black shit, white shit, gay shit, and everything in between. Today we are discussing sexual assault and drug use. Honestly, I did not know. I never really considered sexual assault or gay rape or sexual harassment when it comes to gay people. I don't know why I've never really thought about that. But I guess it's a real thing. So you said you experienced that how long ago? How old were you?
I was probably like 20, 19.
So like 12 years ago. So when you were 20 or 19, you experienced like sexual assault? How would you classify it?
Yeah, sexual assault.
So was it with somebody that you were dating?
No, it was not. It was somebody who I knew through a friend of mine. A real close friend of mine introduced me to somebody as his cousin. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure, the legitimacy of that, but he was introduced to me as his cousin. And we built a rapport, and I felt comfortable with him, and we had a flirtatious relationship and a friendship. It wasn't very consistent, but consistent enough to where I felt comfortable enough to be alone with him.
So set the scene. So like you met him, was it at like a barbecue, like a house party?
I don't remember where we met or how we met, honestly. Mm-hmm. I just know that we came to know each other in some aspect. He said it was his cousin. We would speak periodically here and there. He went to college out of state, and he called me one weekend and said he was in town. He was in Atlanta, and he wanted to see me, and he invited me to a party at a friend of his.
So at this point, had you already had experience dating guys at this point, or were you still pretty green?
I had. I started dating guys when I started dating, so like 16.
Okay, so you weren't like a virgin?
No, I wasn't a virgin.
Okay. So you went to this party.
He invited me to a party. And the crazy thing is, there were so many like signs that I should not have hung around him or I should not have went. Mm-hmm. It's crazy how hindsight is 20/20.
And how the universe
works.
Out things, yeah.
Because I feel like God was telling me very directly and very indirectly not to converse with him, not to be around him, and I kind of forced the situation.
So what were some of the signs?
Okay, so he's in town one weekend. He calls me and he says, so-and-so's having a party, you should come to this party. I said, okay. I'm 19. You know, this is Atlanta.
And was he older?
No, he's my age.
Okay.
We're the same age. We're peers. And it didn't sound like anything out of the ordinary. It sounded like something that was up my alley at the time. So I'm getting ready to go to. He calls me on the phone. He says, "Come to the party." I said, "Okay, I'm going to call your cousin, quote unquote, my friend, and tell him, let's go to the party. Come pick me up." So the cousin ended up being busy, and I called him back and I said, "I can't go," and I think that was my first sign.
Okay.
And the cousin said, "I can't go. I have something else going on," and I called him back and I said, "I can't come. I don't have a ride." And it's probably like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night, but I didn't really have a lot of friends who I would call and just say, like, let's go to this kind of a party. Mm-hmm. Like, this was like one of the few gay friends, and he was probably the only person I would feel comfortable, taking around him. Mm-hmm. So that was the first sign.
Pause. Okay. So you said this was the one friend that you felt comfortable taking around him. Why did you feel comfortable taking that particular friend around him? Was it because he wasn't flamboyant?
No, it had nothing to do with that. Just because he's the one who introduced me to him.
Got it.
And he was my introduction into this
community,
this subset of gay culture, like this gay atmosphere that I was going to enter into. Okay. I was introduced by this friend. Okay. Like, I didn't have other friends who engaged in these types of gays. You know what I mean?
So that was the first sign.
That was the first sign when he couldn't go. So I called him and told him I can't come. He says, "All right, give me a minute. I'm going to call you back and see if anyone's coming from your direction." Mm-hmm. So he calls me back and says, "So-and-so at the party said, call a cab and he'll pay for your cab." I said, "Are you serious?" He said, "Yes." He says, "Call a cab and he'll pay for your cab." I said, "Okay." I call a cab and I'm like in the other room or something. I missed the call when the cab calls and says he's outside. That was your second sign. That was my second sign. Mm-hmm. I called the cab back. The cab driver said, "I'm like 15 minutes away, but I'll come back or whatever." So he came back. He was coming back to my house. So I called. One of my other friends happened to call me like in this period of time when I'm waiting for the cab to come back, and I told him I was invited to a party, and I told him whose party it was. And when I told him whose party it was, he kind of gave me an impression like, "Nah, I'm good," or something like that. Like he wasn't interested in going to the party. And I feel like that was like a third sign for me. But I still took my ass outside and got in the cab.
Mm-hmm. So did the friend actually pay for the taxi?
Well, I catch the cab from my side of town all the way to a whole other side of town. Maybe like a 25, 30-minute cab ride. It ends up being a $60 cab ride.
Oh, wow.
And when I get there, the guy comes outside and he pays for the cab.
The guy that you were going to meet, or the friend
that he said would pay for it.
Okay.
Came outside and paid for it. Like it was nothing. Just paid for the cab. I'm like, wow, okay. So I go inside the party, and it's a party full of just people everywhere. Like, it was like an apartment full. Like, it was a lot of people in the party. They're smoking weed, smoking cigarettes, doing powder. They doing pills, they're drinking alcohol, and they may have been even doing more stuff, but this is just what I was able to see. They offer me some pills. They're like, "You want to take a pill? Do you want to take some pills?" I'm like, what kind of pill is this? And they're like, "It's a muscle relaxant. It feels good when you take it with alcohol and all this kind of stuff." I'm like, "Oh, okay, sure." So they gave me the pill. I pretended I took the pill. I didn't really take the pill. I ended up throwing it on the floor. And I'm throwing it somewhere and just drinking this Corona I had. And we're at this party and there's a lot of people and it's gay boys and older gay men and drag queens and transgender people. It was just the kind of party you might expect in Atlanta at 19 for a 19-year-old to throw. Right. With, this type of people who might, partake in certain types of drugs and alcohol. I had an okay time. So at a certain point, the party comes to an end and starts getting late. And the guy who invites me to the party, my friend's quote-unquote cousin, says, "We're going to leave, but you should come with us," or whatever. You're going to ride with me and the guy who paid for your cab, and we're going to go back to another friend of ours, to his house. So I'm like, okay. I didn't think anything of it at the time. So when we're in the car going to the friend's house, The guy who paid for my cab is driving. Me and the guy who invited me are in the back seat together. So when we're in the back seat together, he's like rubbing on my dick, rubbing on my body, trying to get me like wound up, and I'm kind of like getting like a little wound up, but I'm still feeling a little bit. My guard is up because the guy who's driving, every time we get to like a red light or something, he's like turning around looking in the back, trying to see what's going on in the back seat. So it kind of made me feel like this is kind of a setup because why does he continue to look in the back seat like he's expecting to see something?
Right.
And why does this guy continue to try to give him something to see? So we end up getting to the friend's house. We go inside the house. It's the friend's whose house it is, the homeowner, the guy who drove, who also paid for my cab, and my friend's cousin, quote unquote.
That you were in the back seat.
Exactly, and myself. So it's 4 of us at the house. So we go in the house, and just me, just human nature, and just how I was raised. I don't walk through people's houses unless they invite me into their house. So I went in the house. I just sat in the living room, sat on the couch. I'd never been there before. I knew these people casually. Actually, I knew all 3 of them casually. I just knew the friend's cousin better because we spoke periodically here and there. And they all go upstairs to the bedroom. So
you're the only one sitting downstairs.
I'm the only one sitting downstairs. So the friend who invites me is like, come up here. So I'm like, okay. So I get up and I go upstairs. When I get upstairs, they're all just sitting on the bed, sitting on the guy the guy whose house it is, sitting on his bed. They're like, come up here. So I go and I sit on the bed. As I'm sitting on the bed, the same guy who invited me just starts like trying to kiss on me and rub on me and touch on me. I'm like, chill out. Your friends are in here or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
He's like, it's okay. It's okay. Just a little background. Even though like I had been out for a while at this point, I hadn't experienced a lot sexually. Like maybe I had only done things that I was comfortable with doing, as somebody who, came out at 16, 17, 18, now 19. I wasn't really adventurous. So the whole idea of me even doing something with him in front of his friends
was really
it was
far-fetched.
exactly.
Yeah.
It wasn't even something that maybe I would have done it if it was presented in a different light or if it was my idea or.
But you weren't so seasoned that was okay.
No, and it felt more uncomfortable than not.
So what were your instincts telling you at this point?
My instincts weren't really telling me too much of anything. They were just kind of telling me, you don't feel comfortable. Like, for whatever reason, I just didn't feel comfortable.
So never at any moment did you feel like, okay, I need to get a taxi and get out of here, or?
It never really crossed my mind to run, no.
Okay.
But for whatever reason, the whole night, even from the time he called me on the phone, it was like I had a guard up the whole night. I didn't feel comfortable. I felt like...
Those were your instincts.
Yeah.
That was your instincts.
They were. And we're on the bed, and he starts, like, kissing on me, trying to rub on me in front of his friends, and I'm telling him, like, your friends are sitting here watching.
So what are the friends doing? Are they, like, pretending to watch TV, or they're just kind of sitting there waiting for something to happen?
Initially, they were just sitting on the opposite side of the bed, just watching TV or doing whatever. I couldn't really tell because I was sitting on the bed, so my back was to them.
To them, okay.
But eventually, at a certain point, he started to become more aggressive, and they started touching on me. I could feel them touching my back, touching my shoulders. And
so it's 4 of them?
It's 3 of them,
3 of them.
and myself.
Okay.
So they're, telling me, calm down, it's not a big deal, why are you acting like this? A lot of things to kind of make me go along with it. So at a certain point, the friend who invited me is down between my legs, and he, like, just pulls my pants down and pulls my dick out. Puts my dick in his mouth. And he starts, like, trying to suck my dick pretty much. Not trying to. So he had my dick in his mouth. And the other 2 friends are holding me down on the bed. Like, one friend has one arm, one friend has the other arm. And I'm squirming. I'm like, get off me. And they're all 3 of them are like, calm down. Like, it's okay. Just calm down. It's okay. And I'm still like, I'm saying like, no, y'all need to let go of my arms. And they're like, it's okay. It's okay. So it got to a point where I told the guy, I said, if you don't take my dick out of your mouth, I'm going to pee in your mouth. Like, I'm going to pee in your mouth. Like, I'm dead serious. And he stopped. So at this point, I was kind of shocked. I wasn't kind of shocked. I was extremely shocked. And it took me a moment maybe to even think of what I should do next because I had kind of I'd been doing. It was a sequence of things that just were unpredictable and things that I had never dealt with before, even expected to happen. This was like a whole evening of a lot of firsts for me, and I didn't know how to navigate through it. And
So when you say first, you mean like being introduced to the pill or the drugs?
somebody offered me pills. I had never had anybody offer me pills before.
Right.
Prior to this, I'd never been in a party where it was so much open drug use.
Yeah.
Prior to this, and I'd never had group sex.
Right.
I'd never even been in an environment where somebody even where it was even offered to me. Like I'd never, all I heard about my friends who would maybe have group sex is that it happens organically. You're in a place, it just happens. Blah 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 blah. And it never had happened for me like that. So I think I was just my decision making skills at a certain point. I was just so wore out. I didn't know what to do, and
So you were basically processing at that point, like after they had let you go, and you were trying to figure out what your next move should be. So like, what were the other two guys doing? The ones that were holding your arms, like what did they do after?
After he took my dick out of his mouth, they let go of my arms. I jumped up from the bed. And I ran to like the bathroom. Like I don't know what in my instinct just told me like get up and go to the bathroom. I went to the bathroom, and I closed the door behind me. And then as I closed the door behind me, I was just in there. I was like looking in the mirror, and I was just like, what the fuck? Like, did you get yourself into? Like I just felt really, really. I felt less than smart. I feel like I had put myself in a bad situation, and it was my fault. And as I'm in the bathroom looking in the mirror at the guy who paid for my cab, kicks the door into the bathroom. And it's like cursing me out. Why are you playing these fucking games? You knew what was up when we invited you over here. I don't have time for this kind of shit.
So is this guy older, or is he?
Yeah, he's older. He's older.
Okay.
He's older. And I was probably 19. He's probably in his late 30s, early 40s, something like that. And he's like going off on me. And I'm like, I don't know what he told you, but this isn't what I was invited to.
Right.
He didn't invite me to this. He invited me to a party. And next thing I know, he slapped the shit out of me. He slapped me across the face. And I'm like stunned. And I'm just standing there just looking at him. He said, I gotta go before I kill him. He like grabs his keys and like runs out of the house. And then after he runs out of the house, the other two guys are like looking out the bedroom. They're just like just staring at me. Then the guy who invited me to the party comes up to me and is like, I'm sorry. And he leaves. He left with the other guy. And the guy whose house it was just me and him. He came to the bathroom and he was like very apologetic. He was saying, I'm sorry. I know that they were going to do that. They kind of painted a picture to me that you were under the impression that this would happen. And he was very apologetic. And he's very apologetic to this day. Like if I happen,
so you still see him? If
I happen to see him.
Do you see any of the other ones?
No. I've seen the other two, maybe once or twice since that happened. I saw them like maybe shortly after it happened, and they were upset with me somehow about it. Like one of my friends came back to me and told me that the guy who paid for my cab ride, that he wanted to fight me, that he wanted to like beat me up and all this kind of stuff, and I was like, why does he want to fight me? Why does he want to beat me up? And he was like, cause you're running around telling people that he tried to rape you. I was like, I didn't tell anybody that. And the crazy thing was, after it happened, I didn't tell anyone.
So basically, he was trying to do damage control.
He was doing damage control.
Right.
Because I didn't tell him.
Just in case you told someone.
Because after the fact, after it happened, I felt so irresponsible. I felt like I was at blame because I played my part in it. I did feel a certain degree of victim. I felt victimized. I felt victimization, and I didn't tell anyone. I internalized it and I kept it to myself. I didn't tell a person.
So when was the first time you actually told someone, that you actually spoke the words?
Maybe about 3 years ago.
And this happened when you were 19?
When I was 19, yeah.
And you're 32 now?
I'm 32 now.
And you just told someone 3 years ago?
3 years ago.
Was that like a friend of yours? Or
someone I was in a relationship with. Okay. We were watching TV and they started talking about, at the time, the big hot button in the media. The news was covering sexual assaults in the military. A lot of men in the military were being sexually assaulted, and they weren't coming forward. And when I watched it, it was like it hit me in the head like a pound of bricks. Like I had shut it out of my mind to the degree that it literally never popped in my head again.
You had compartmentalized
I had.
Yeah.
I had
put it in a place where you could forget it, or at least you thought you had forgotten it.
Yeah.
So the person that you see from time to time now that was there, is he around your age?
No,
or he's older.
He's
also?
a little older than me as well.
So when you run into him, he's still apologetic?
He'll bring it up every now and then and just reiterate that. I mean, he's brought it. I don't see him that frequently, but when I've seen him, after it happened, immediately after it happened, maybe I saw him shortly, and he came up to me and apologized. He apologized immediately after they left and said he didn't know. He's apologized to me numerous times. The other two, it was never an apology. It was never even any acknowledgement.
So it's probably safe to say that it's probably haunted him if he's been kind of...
Yeah, I definitely think he feels bad about it.
So once you had the conversation with the guy that you were in a relationship with 3 years ago, that you talked to about it, that Tracy spoke about, did you kind of see it in a different way? Did you start to really process it at that point? From that point?
Not really. I think that I just more so was relating to what was going on because I hadn't ever related to that.
So do you think that today, it was your fault, or that you were less than smart, or how do you feel now, or have you even thought about that part of it?
I think that there's definitely accountability from all sides. And I know that because after that, I made different decisions. I never found myself in a situation like that again, and I hope not to. I know things happen, but...
How did you start to process things differently? How did you start to do things differently?
Ironically, I would pay more attention to things that my mother would say. My mother always told me growing up, you are the company you keep. Birds of a feather flock together. Like, those weren't my feathers. Those weren't my birds. That whole crowd wasn't my scene. Not that I was above it or, not that I was better than, but we just weren't the same. We weren't cut from the same cloth. That wasn't, even in the situation when I was there, I felt uncomfortable. It wasn't my comfort zone. That wasn't my type of situation. And I think that, I saw this quote, if at first you don't succeed, do it the way your mother told you the first time. And I think that it made me it definitely was a testament to just pay more attention. I had no business being at that party. If I couldn't get there on my own, I probably should not have went. And the environment that I was in, it wasn't any kind of environment that was positive or uplifting. It was a bad situation,
So the night that it happened, the guy whose house you were in came to the restroom and apologized, and that's the same guy that, if you run into him today, he'll apologize still. Did he get you home? Like, how did you get home? He did.
He took me home immediately.
So he took you home.
Yeah.
I mean, that could have really turned a different way. Like, it really could have been. And not to say that it wasn't rape, because I do think that it was rape. How do you classify it? Would you classify it as sexual assault?
Yeah, definitely. Because
would you classify it as actual rape?
I don't really know.
Because it doesn't have to be intercourse for it to be rape.
That's true. And there's different degrees. It's a spectrum. But it was definitely a violation of my sexual space.
Right.
It affected the way I related to people sexually after that.
In what way? Or ways? Did it make you more cautious? Did it make you more
It definitely
guarded?
made me more cautious. It made me more guarded. I think sex is something that, as humans, it needs to be a safe space because you have to be able to be comfortable and express yourself in that way to other people. And it took away my comfort. It took away my comfort.
Because I've had conversations with guys that have been molested, and I've had them. One in particular said that he oftentimes was molested when he was sleeping, and so that by the time he met me, it was always very uncomfortable if I woke him up for sex. Like if I started,
because it was a trigger.
It was a trigger for him. So did it kind of do that kind of a thing for you, where not necessarily that you were sleeping, but was it a trigger for you, like if somebody just started touching you out of
not a trigger for being touched, but maybe a trigger for group sex. because of that, group sex never had an appeal to me. It always seemed like more intimidating because I'm thinking, what could somebody do?
Right.
What would you classify it as?
I think it's rape.
You think it's rape?
I think it's absolutely rape. Because I don't think rape has to be intercourse. I think rape is anything that's classified as force. Like sexual activity that's forced, whether it's oral, whether it's penetrative. I think that it was rape. And so do you have a better understanding of why women perhaps don't speak out? Because I think that oftentimes what happens is people who haven't experienced it don't really understand why women don't speak up. And men. And again, at the beginning, like I was saying, like I've never really thought about sexual assault or rape when it comes to men or gay men in particular. I used to work, or even sexual harassment, even for that matter. I used to work for a company here in Atlanta, and I had a female coworker. She was actually a supervisor. She wasn't my supervisor, but she was a supervisor in the department. And she used to say to me all the time, "Boy, I would fuck you. Like if you just gave me a chance, like I would put this pussy on you." Like she would say shit like that to me. She would literally bend over in front of me, like in the break room or wherever. And like there were other coworkers around. But I didn't feel violated because of our rapport. So I didn't feel like it was definitely inappropriate, but I didn't feel violated in a sense where I felt like I needed to go to HR or anything like that. But I know that there are instances where those kinds of things happen, even if it's from a female to a gay man. It doesn't have to be a gay man to another gay man. I think if you feel uncomfortable, then you need to speak up. And I think that's the hardest part. And I think a lot of times people don't speak up because they feel at fault. They feel like they're complicit. They feel like they made poor choices. But if you didn't invite it, then the only option is to speak up, because otherwise the person continues to go on and do that thing. Because what I'm wondering now is if they had they done this before with anybody else, or did they try it with someone later?
The way that it went down, it didn't feel like it was an original
that has happened before.
It seemed to. I'm not saying that they forced someone to the point where the person said no, but maybe they initiated a situation like that before, and somebody did comply and give in.
Right.
But I feel my way through a lot of things. That's not something that I think I could feel my way through.
What do you mean when you say you couldn't feel your way through?
If one of my friends called me right now, if two of my friends called me right now and said, "We're bringing a boy over, let's have this boy together."
Right.
If the boy's sitting there saying no,
right,
it wouldn't cross my mind to continue to grab his arm or to
right.
Right.
But that speaks to integrity and character and who you are as a person versus who they are. Like, I mean, I hate that happened to you. I mean, I think that it happens more often than people acknowledge. Because even if it's not at that degree or to that degree, I've been in a club and somebody's grabbed my ass or grabbed my dick or whatever. It's all unwanted. And I think that sometimes people have this idea that all gay men are just like so sexually driven, and that you always want, or you're always inviting or welcoming in advance, and that's not the case.
No. And I also think that some people feel like, as far as relating to someone, that they're giving you some sort of compliment or some sort of validation that they internally think that you're seeking out.
Right.
If they see you in a sexual way, they think that you're seeking sexual validation, and they want to give that to you.
Especially depending on what you're wearing, like whether you're wearing something that's really fitted or whether you're wearing something that's cut off. I remember one time, the very first time that I went down to the Essence Music Festival. It was the year that Katrina happened, and I remember going out to some clubs, and it was me and two other guys, and one of them was my friend. And the other guy was his friend, was my friend's friend. And we were at some little club in New Orleans, and, if you've been to New Orleans and you've partied on the gay scene, like, I don't mean Bourbon Street, and I don't mean in the French Quarters, I mean, like, in the neighborhoods, like, in the hood. It's rough.
Yeah.
And I will never forget, we were standing in this club, and somebody kept like reaching and like touching my ass, and I'm like, and I'm looking, so I'm thinking that it was my friend like doing it, just that, you know, your friend will sometimes do that and try to throw you off, and I'm like looking around, and I just would never catch it. And so finally, the guy did it again, and I turned quick enough this time, and I saw him trying to pull his hand back, and we literally were about to get into a fight in the club because this nigga touched my ass, and because I approached him about it, and because I just don't like when somebody touches me in that way. Like, not because it was on my ass, just period. Like, I just think that it's just
It's crossing a boundary.
it's crossing a boundary, and it's very aggressive. And so my friend was like, no, because we can go in here tonight. You know what I'm saying? Like, my friend stepped in, like, we literally in this club about to fight. You know what I'm saying? All because he touched my ass, and then gonna try to get an attitude with me because I confronted him about it. Like, it was unacceptable. It was unacceptable. So I can't imagine like what I would do if I was at somebody's house, at a house party, and somebody made those kinds of advances, especially being there and not having transportation. Because I think for me, I would have been thinking like, how am I going to get out of here? Because at this point, did you have a cell phone at this point? Because this was like,
No.
people didn't really have cell phones. There was no Uber.
Yeah.
So like it was a different time. So I would have really felt trapped.
I did feel trapped, but I think I knew that I wasn't going to die. Like, I knew this isn't a life or death situation. And at no point did I feel like I needed to kill my way out of this or fight my way out of this with that much gusto. I just more felt very vulnerable. I did. But I do think that, like, to piggyback on what you said, a lot of times I understand why people don't come forward and why people don't say anything. Because you do feel like you said, complicit. You feel like even though I did not initiate this type of scenario, I partook in it.
And were you feeling or thinking that people were going to say, well, why were you there by yourself? Or like, why?
No, I think that people probably would have just not either I think I felt complicit. So that was the most important thing. Like, in my heart, in my psyche, I felt that I played a part in it. So I felt like, have you ever heard that saying, like, there are no victims, only willing participants? I felt like I was a willing participant because
you agreed to go to the party.
I agreed to go to the party. I didn't will that situation on myself, but I went to the party, and in retrospect, I feel like there were so many signs, and now I feel like maybe those signs, they weren't really signs. It was just life. Like, now I miss text messages and phone calls all the time. It's not a big deal. It doesn't mean anything one way or another. It's just, it is what it is. But I don't know, at the time, I just really felt like, and then when my friend told me what the guy was saying, it amplified it. But
the guy that was saying he's going around telling people that I tried to rape him.
I said that.
Even though you hadn't.
Even though I hadn't even said it.
Right.
Yeah.
But again, that was his damage control, and he probably was really trying to gauge your friend to see how much he knew.
Yeah.
And if he knew anything. So was there a point or time that you considered pressing charges or going to talk to the police or anything?
It never crossed my mind.
Never crossed your mind.
Ever.
Okay.
I think as a black person, police are like a last resort.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We don't call the police.
Just out of curiosity, at that time, were you out to your family?
I was, yeah.
You were out to your family. So you never felt like having the conversation with like your parents or your mom?
No.
No. And so I'm just astounded. Like, it was just 3 years ago that you had the conversation with someone that you were in a relationship with. Like, you had never told like a close friend or anybody?
Never.
And so you just been carrying this all of these years?
Yeah. It never crossed to me.
Because you had put it away. Like, you literally had buried it away.
Yes. But I think also maybe it's just like relative to my age. I'm just now 32. Like, this is really a time when people maybe are more transparent. I never had a conversation with anybody where they told me anyone had been sexually aggressive with them or they experienced certain types of things until more recently in my life. It's now where a lot of people are, I guess, connecting the dots between things that happened to them in their life and how their life is now. but it never crossed my mind to call the police. Never crossed my mind to call the police.
So you're saying you've had people say to you that they've been raped?
As of now, more recently, yeah.
Really?
And it's only in response to me telling them about myself.
Okay, so you open up and then
If
they
I
in turn.
open up, it's a lot of times when I open up to somebody, they'll come to me and say, I've experienced something similar, or I've experienced something worse, or, I almost went through that type of a situation, but without being provoked, I've never had someone come up to me and have that kind of a conversation.
So aside from the same reasons that women hold that kind of a burden, and never share with anybody, do you think there's a separate set of reasons that a gay person, a gay man, and I'm sure obviously it would happen in the lesbian community too, but do you think that there's a separate set of reasons why a gay man would not speak out? Do you think it's because sometimes a gay person would feel weak or passive, or, you know what I mean? Like,
I just think that it's not on our radar. As you said for yourself, you said you never even factored in sexual aggression or rape.
I never even thought that it happened. Like, I never even considered it because I've never, and I guess because I've never heard of it. Like, I've never had somebody come to me and say, I was violated, or such and such did this, and I cannot say that I've ever had somebody come to me and say that they had someone to force themselves on them. Obviously, it happens.
It happens, but it's not something that we discuss.
I wonder if there are support groups for that. Like,
I'm sure there are.
I probably should have looked into that before we had.
Did you need a support group?
Do me?
Are you saying I needed a support group?
No.
Oh, yeah.
No. I'm saying I wonder if there's a support group for gay men that have been sexually assaulted or raped. I'm sure there are.
I'm sure there is. Yeah.
But I mean, in all of my gay years, I've never even heard of.
Because I think that type of support group would be the kind of support group that you would only find out if you provoke the information for it. Like, as I said, This is not a conversation that I don't think, ever initiated with me. Like, ever. And I had a friend in high school. She went to a party and she woke up and her panties were missing. Mm-hmm. And, she doesn't remember what happened. And it was a situation with her, but that was like, a girl, and we've all universally pretty much come to an agreement that women are raped, even if some people feel like they provoke it with the way they dress or the way they carry themselves. We universally are on the same page that male on female rape is a thing, but I think it's more common than we discuss.
Right. And that was part of the reason why I wanted to, like, last season I did a show, it was called Man versus Man, Domestic Violence. And it was important to have that conversation because I think when people think of domestic violence, they always think about women being the victim and men being the aggressor. But because that had happened to someone that I know personally, I thought it was important to have the conversation. And so once that show went up, it was just like all of these people started messaging me on social media privately. They didn't comment publicly, like in the actual comments. They would message me, they would DM me on Instagram, or they would inbox me on Facebook and say, wow, like, that really helped me. Like, I was in that very situation. Like, you have no idea how that touched me. I even had a police officer inbox me on Instagram who said that as a police officer, most of the cases that he had responded to in terms of domestic violence were gay relationships. And as a result of a friend of mine who had gone through that, it was because of that I learned that 50% of gay relationships actually experience domestic violence. And so when I was writing my second book, I wanted to speak to that because I think we often discount a push, a slap, a punch, a kick, because we're men. And so it's just like, oh, well, that's just what men do. And, it's not really domestic violence, but that's really what it is. And we have to start qualifying and quantifying it as such. And like I mentioned before on that same podcast about domestic violence, that the closest that I had come to a situation like that was a relationship that I had in 2005. And we had just gotten into this scuffle, this fight. And that was the only time that it happened. There were never any signs leading up to it. There was nothing that happened afterwards. Like, it was not an aggressive relationship at all. But for me, it was a sign that it actually spoke to other things that were going on in the relationship. And for me, I knew that that was the beginning of the end of that relationship. Not because I thought that it was going to happen again, but because I felt like if we had gotten to that point that we could not communicate, that we couldn't speak and talk, that we would act out in that kind of way, it was time to go. It was time to go.
Let me just say this: I've spoken to people who've gone through like situations far worse than what I went through. I spoke to a guy who either drank something or somebody gave him a pill or something, and he blacked out. He said he woke up in the midst of being gang raped by like 3 or 4 guys, and he doesn't remember a lot of what happened, and it traumatized him to a really, 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 really bad place. And I'm thankful I didn't go through anything that severe.
And then, you know, because you said they gave you a pill, so I mean, that really could have been your story.
Yeah.
That could have been your story. Had you thought about that?
No, not until now.
Oh.
I hadn't. But I knew I wasn't taking that pill.
Right.
I threw that pill so quick. But I think that in the LGBTQ community, we have a unique set of issues as with any community. But I think that we need to expand or broaden the conversation into other things because we do focus on a few subjects, I think.
You mean our conversation is only on a few things?
A few things, yeah.
And of course, HIV is always
That's it.
That's the only thing that we really talk about. And then sometimes there is a conversation about addiction. That comes up from time to time.
Now, with the opioid epidemic and meth.
I read an article called Tina and Me. I think it was called. Or either the article was called something else, and the article was about this documentary that this guy was filming called Tina and Me. And it was about these 2 gay boys in New York. And one of the guys in the documentary was, I don't know what his profession was, but you know, after years of trying to do whatever it was he was trying to do and not really getting the results or advancing in the way that he expected or wanted to, he started to just kind of be down on himself, just like anybody else. Like, I know there were times where I was like really, really trying to be a songwriter, and that was what I wanted to do, and then like working with Brandy, but then it not really materializing the way that I wanted it to, and then writing and producing a stage play that has sold out multiple times, and Tyler Perry came to the show, invited me to his house, but then I still couldn't get the show on the national tour. And even now, like, pushing these books, and it's just like there are times where I want to be at a different point. I want to be further along. But this guy was just really, really, I guess, down on himself. And so then he found himself in a relationship that wasn't really healthy, and it became abusive. And he ended up becoming HIV positive. I don't know if it was from the relationship or if it was just, you know, at some other point. And then he talks about how he ended up getting on meth and how it was just so hard for him to pull himself off of it because life just kept happening to him.
But you know how meth works as a drug? Do you know how meth works as a drug? So the way meth works, when you're happy, you're excited, your brain releases endorphins, which gives you a sensation of happiness. The highest amount of endorphins that the chemical can be released in a human adult is when you have an orgasm during sex. Okay. That's the most intense spurt of endorphins that your body releases. When you smoke meth, it amplifies that peak in endorphins, and it stabilizes it. So it changes your perspective on happiness in your life. So when you're not smoking meth, you can't achieve that same level of happiness, and your brain says to itself, I want to be happy. Why can't I be happy? And it goes back to, well, when was the last time I was happy? And the only time you can think of when you were happy last and you felt this new
was when
you're on meth. Right. So that's why people, when they smoke crystal meth, they can stop for a short period of time, but their brain's been reprogrammed to expect this unrealistic level of happiness. And the only way they can get this is how they're high. That's why crystal meth has the lowest success rate of any drug as far as rehabilitation after addiction, and the lowest level of somebody even quitting successfully, because it alters your brain.
Wow.
Yeah, all
I
to
never
the
knew
point.
that. But that makes sense because this particular guy was just saying that he was always depressed. And he just couldn't get himself on track, because again, he had this relationship that failed. He found out he was HIV positive. His career wasn't moving the way that he expected it to. And so that was his only comfort. Getting on this drug was his only comfort.
You know Fergie from the Black Eyed Peas?
Mm-hmm.
She used to be a meth addict.
Really?
Yeah, she did. And I think the success rate for meth is like the lowest of any drug. I think it's like 28%.
Really?
Of all addicts ever actually.
I wonder how long she used.
She said she used for a while, but she said that the day that she quit, she was running down Hollywood Boulevard in Los Angeles, and she was having this hallucination that the police and the FBI were chasing her. She ran into a church, and she ran to the altar and started praying, and she said she prayed to God that if when I walk out of this church, the FBI and everyone is out there, if they're gone,
They're not out there, yeah.
then I'll get clean. She said she walked out and nobody was out there, and she got clean that day.
I don't think I've ever heard that story.
Yeah.
Wow.
But that meth addiction, I think that it's like, however crack was in the 80s, I was like, not alive for a lot of the 80s. I don't recall the 80s. But it's a motherfucker. It's bad. It's bad. My mother's best friend, who I call her aunt, her daughter is in Philly with some man. She's on meth. She's prostituting. My aunt found out she got arrested. Then my aunt looked into some more information and found out that she had been getting arrested very frequently for prostitution in Philly and meth possession.
And the thing that's so crazy is when that drug first hit the scene, it was more a white drug.
And it was a party drug. People didn't think that it was anything so serious.
Right. It didn't seem as powerful.
They were calling it partying and playing. So I got friends who were on it.
I always wonder what makes a person start any drug. Because as intelligent people, we all have this idea or knowledge of what it does. Like for me, I saw what it decimated my family, like my mother's side of the family, like my aunts, my sister, my brother, cousins, male and female cousins. I remember distinctly, like my grandmother's house, my maternal grandmother's house was the place that we all went to for Thanksgiving. We all went there for Christmas. And that was where we had dinner and, we got together. And my family was always really, really close-knit. Like we would, after dinner, whether it was Christmas or Thanksgiving, we would start playing games. Like we would do win, lose, or draw. We'd break up into teams. We'd play Pictionary, like whatever. And when the drugs really infested the family, we couldn't even put together a team. Because the addicts in the family, my grandmother lived in it was a 3-story house plus a basement, so technically it was 4 stories. The drug addicts in the family would literally migrate to the 3rd floor, to my aunt's floor, to her bedroom. And they would lock the door. And like nobody could come in, none of the children could come in. And like we'd be calling them, trying to assemble teams, like, come on, we ready to play. Da, da, da. We ain't playing no gang on, you know what I mean? Or like they'd come down or they'd start playing with us. And then slowly they would leave and it would be their turn to get up to draw. And we like, it's your turn, like what you doing? Don't open this door, don't open this door. Like it just became this thing where it was just like, what the fuck? So for me, I saw what it did to my own family. So as a thinking person, it's just like, well, I can't imagine ever just trying that out. Just, you know what I'm saying? And I dated a guy who did coke for some time, and I didn't know it when we got together. I found out later, and I write about it in the second book. So to this day, he doesn't even speak to me. But really and truly, I wrote about it not so much because I was trying to write about him, but because I was just really fascinated that it was one of those things that was happening in the gay community. In particular, it was starting to really, really happen in the black gay community more and more. So I was fascinated by it. And then I was fascinated by his reasoning because he was just like, I had always wanted to try it. And, I'm an adventurous person, so I always just wanted to just see what it would do. And I understand that, there are people that are like daredevil type people that want to jump out of planes because you start to see more and more black people talking about jumping out of planes now. Skydiving. I just didn't understand it because for me, looking at him, I'm like, he's such a smart person. And so how is it that, so I'm just looking at it at the bare bones of it. I'm like, he's such a smart person. So how does a smart person decide or make the choice to just try drugs or coke just to see. So
But I don't think that takes away from intellect.
no, I don't. I don't either. I don't either. And so I understand that. I think that what happens is it has nothing to do with you being smart or not smart. I think sometimes, and this is what I was saying to him, I was like, so there was nothing happening in your life that kind of made you, I guess, vulnerable to say, oh, well, let me just try this. You understand what I'm saying? And maybe it wasn't.
I think that it's interesting you say that because your approach in life is really so directly tied to how you're related to subjects.
Exactly.
You had a relation to drugs.
To drugs through my family.
An example that turned it off to you. And I have friends. I have a friend. His mother drinks she drinks a lot, and because of that, it made him never want to drink.
He never wanted to drink.
I have another friend. His mother used to be on drugs, so because of that, it never made him want to do drugs. But both of them now, they drink and they do drugs.
Really?
Yeah, they do. And growing up in my house, nobody in my house really drank or did drugs. My mother, I've never seen my mother drink more than one glass of wine. And my father, I've never seen him under the influence of anything either. My siblings, my half-siblings, their mother, she used to be a drug addict for a long, 20 years, a long period of time. So for me, I never had a gauge on drugs. It was kind of for me to just kind of feel out in life on my own. And because of that, and luckily I don't have an addictive personality, but kind of similar to what he said, I was curious. And I've done drugs, I've done cocaine, I've smoked weed, I've done ecstasy, alcohol, of course, but outside of that, nothing else. I was offered crystal meth before. I was at a friend's house, and this guy was on the couch smoking out of a pipe, and I asked him what it was, and he said it was meth. And I asked him what it was, and he just said it was a drug that makes you feel really good, and blah, blah, blah. And I was considering doing it.
Why?
And I don't, because I'm curious. I don't know. I'm just one of those people. I have to, touch the water to see if it's high.
So there was nothing going on, where things were just falling apart in your life?
No, my life was fine. I was doing ecstasy at the time. I was
So how long ago was this?
I was probably 17, 18.
And you were going to try it?
Yeah.
So what do you think made you not try it?
I'll tell you what made me not try it. The week before, I went to a grocery store, and they had the little gay section of magazines. And I got one of those David magazines. And in the magazine, it had a page. And the page was this guy, in the club. He had a nice body. He was dancing. And he was, having a good time. And in the top of the article said, "Do you like to party?" And for whatever reason, I read the page in the David magazine, and it said, if you smoke crystal meth, also known as Tina, is a drug that people use the slang term when they use it to party.
Right.
And it said if you've partied or smoked crystal meth recently, you need to have an HIV test. Crystal meth lowers your inhibitions, and a lot of times people have really risky sex on crystal meth. This was the article was telling me.
Right. So you had just read that the week
before. I had
before.
just read this maybe 2 weeks before. So when he offered it to me, that popped in my head.
I believe in omens.
It popped in my head immediately, and I said, "This is the drug I read about." But I didn't say that to him.
Right.
I didn't want to kill his high. But I didn't want to kill his high.
Well, he may have been so high that you wouldn't have been able to kill it. No way.
You're right. But I did ask him, I said, what are the side effects? Because at this point, I had done enough drugs, I knew enough about drugs to know as much as the high is, it's going to bring you down just as much. So I asked him, I said, what are the side effects? What does it do when you smoke it? What else happens? And he told me, the first time I smoked this, I was up, I hit the pipe one time, and I was up for 2 days straight.
Damn.
This is what he told me, I swear to God. And when he told me that, I said, I have to work tomorrow.
Right.
So maybe I need to do this on a long weekend. But I already knew from doing ecstasy. Ecstasy will keep you up all night, till the next morning. So I knew drugs had that kind of effect.
Right.
But
see, the thing is, I've never tried anything other than weed, and that was back. I think the last time I tried it, I was in college. And if you've been listening to this podcast, you know I'm 41, so it's been a minute since I've been out of college. But I mean, other than alcohol, and I drink. But I've just never been drawn to anything else. But that, like you said, I think that part of it is because
of my experiences.
How you were socialized.
How I was socialized with it. My family using it, and I saw the effects on them. But I think also it's just like, I think I'm just such a methodical kind of person in every aspect of my life. Like, I think about that even in terms of like dating. I think of like, okay, so what is this going to mean 3 months from now, 6 months from now? You know what I'm saying? So I think about that even with everything. So I think about that one time translating into 6 months down the line, you're still doing it. So like,
I think for me, I don't have an addictive personality. And I'm the type of person, I can do something until I'm done with it. Like, I can get over something.
so you've never felt like you were addicted to anything that you've tried?
No. No, never. And
Have you ever craved it?
in a social sense, but not from a physical sense.
Right, like you would be at a party and you're like, oh, let me.
Like, now that I'm older, when I party or go to like a club, it's not as fun because I'm not rolling on a pill or doing something crazy. You know what I mean? So I think when I was younger, it was part of our social interaction with each other. So it felt organic and it felt normal, and it just felt like this is just what it is. But do I miss it? No. And did I ever think that I was at risk of becoming an addict? No. It never crossed my mind. I knew that.
But does it ever cross anybody's mind?
No,
you know what I'm saying?
I think I would see how people around me, not people who were really close to me, but people who I knew. You know, when you're young, you know people. People who I knew, I could tell it was different between how they approached it and how I approached it. You know what I mean? Like I said, I was asking the guy about the meth, but I was still thinking about going to work the following day.
Right.
Where I knew people who were just kind of like,
I don't give a fuck.
exactly, fuck a job. I want to. This partying is my priority. Being popular is my priority. This nightlife is my priority. I never had that kind of energy, and also luckily, like just the family I have and the family I have around me, my mother and things of that nature. I knew that if I got to a point where I had any kind of a problem, even if it was breaking my skin out, my mother was going to address it to me. She would say, something wrong. Because even when I would do the ecstasy, I would go home and I would sleep all day, and she would come to my bedroom and be like, "Are you depressed? It's 4:00. Why are you in bed? Your shades are closed. It's dark in your bedroom. It's 4:00 in the afternoon. What's going on?" So.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And like when I would have this conversation with my ex, I was just like, like what would make you try it, knowing the potential of it? Like, we've all seen people who have lost it all or who have OD'd or whatever. Like,
but
the question
thing is, it's like a spectrum. I think that some people just have addictive personalities. Some people are running away from something.
Yeah.
And some people they self-medicate. Some people use drugs to self-medicate. Some people use sex. Some people use work. Some people use food. If you're the type of person where you're running from something, spending money, if you're the type of person that you're running from something, you're going to find a path to run down. Right. And it just depends on that moment when you decide to run, what path you're in front of. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I wasn't running from anything, luckily at that time. It just was more of a social outlet for me.
So after that first time when you were like, what'd you say, 18? When somebody was smoking meth? Had you ever considered it another time after that?
No. I think that after that initial time when somebody offered it to me, I had never even been in an environment, unless it was unbeknownst to me, where meth was present.
Right.
But in the last 4 or 5 years, since it's blown up and become so
available,
no, I would never do it. That's one drug I would never.
Right. So your friends, you said you have a couple friends that are meth addicts. What do you say to them, or can you say anything to them?
I don't say anything.
Have they lost anything, like their place or their?
Yeah, everything.
Really?
Everything. And the crazy thing is, meth is like a secret society.
Yeah.
You have to have an end. You have to know somebody who does it. And the crazy thing is, if you meet one person who does it, they'll tell you about everybody else who does it.
Really?
Because they
know each other.
Like I was saying, it's a drug that makes people very, very sexual and very uninhibited. And they'll tell me that they smoke meth with this person, they smoke meth with that person, this person, that person. I went to a friend's house maybe like 3 weeks ago now, 4 weeks ago, and he was telling me that a friend of his had begun to smoke meth. As we're at the house, as luck would have it, the friend pops up. We're sitting at the dining room table, and the friend who smokes the meth starts saying stuff about smoking meth casually, like not even just brings it up very casually. And I ignored it, like I didn't even hear it. The next day, when I spoke to my friend whose house it was, he told me that the guy said he was doing that purposefully to see if I was gonna bite, because if I smoked meth, he wanted to smoke the meth with me as well.
Yeah.
So it was like he was fishing. Now, and I've even been at parties before where somebody who is just a person people know was walking around this party and like asking did anybody have any coke in a street name for coke, which is a bump. He was walking around the party saying, "Does anybody have a bump? Does anybody have a bump?" He would walk a few feet and say, "Does anybody have a bump?" And people it was a party with straight people, gay people, men, women, and a lot of the straight people and women in particular were like, "What is he talking about?" Right. They were paying attention to him, and they were saying, what is the bump?" And he would say, "Oh, you don't have one. If you had it, you would know."
Right.
You know, and he would walk to a different part of the room and say, "Do you have a bump?"
Yeah.
Until he found, eventually he found the bump, and, the people who did the bump disappeared, like you said, like your family.
Like my family would.
They went upstairs. They didn't want to play the game anymore. So I think it's just really interesting, but you have to kind of have, just for me, like as old as I've gotten, not saying that I'm like, I don't want to sound like I'm using somebody to get information, but for lack of a better term, I got to have an in into that world to know,
because it's a subculture within.
It's a subculture within exactly. And since I've been keeping that open with a friend of mine, it's so many people.
Yeah.
It's a lot of people.
Yeah, and that's what's scary.
It's a lot of people.
What's interesting about what you just said, it made me think about the ex that I was just speaking about, because when we were together, I remember we would just be driving around. Like, we would be in the car, just coming from some place, like eating or whatever we were doing. And he would say, "You see that place right there?" It would just be these nondescript buildings. And he was like, "That's where they do after hours." So, like, after the people would leave the club, they'd go to these after hours that would start at 3, 4 in the morning. And he would say, that's an after hour. And I'm like, "Wait, what are you talking about? That place right there with that gate, like, up on it?" He's like, "Yeah." I said, "Well, how do you know?" And, like, these would be all around town. And I'd be like, "Well, how did you know that was an after hour spot?" And he said, "Well, because the people who go to those things and who arrange them and organize them, they know who participate in that stuff." And he was saying that that's where a lot of the drug stuff happens. I know that it happens in the clubs too, because I've actually been in the bathroom and seen people using the bump. In fact, I was in Einstein's one time, and I was using the restroom.
Ooh, don't put Einstein's on here.
Well, listen, I didn't mean to say it, but it's out there now. But
so you're saying Einstein's is a drug den?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there was some drug use.
So if you want to go use drugs, you should go to Einstein.
No, that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. I love Einstein. They've always been supportive of me in my books. I did 2 book signings there. But I was in the restroom, and I was actually standing there washing my hands. And you know that the bathroom, there are 2 stalls, and then there's an actual door that goes to an actual toilet.
Urinal, yeah.
Right. And so these 2 guys came out of the actual stall, like the wooden door. And, like, they were just rubbing their nose, and they were looking at each other's nose, and they were wiping each other's noses, to clean up. And they just kind of, like, looked at me, and then they just kind of looked at themselves in the mirror, and they walked out. And I just remember thinking they just disappeared into this sea of people, because it was a Friday night. They disappeared into this sea of people, this crowd of people. And I just remember thinking, like, wow, you just don't know who's who. And going back to, again, my ex, he said to me, "You wouldn't know who does it, because if that's not your
circle,
if that's not your circle, that's not your crowd, you wouldn't know. They know who to approach, they know who to talk to, and those people know where the after hour spots are, and what's happening." So to your point, it is like a secret society. It's like a secret world. It's like this underground world. And when we were together, when we first started going out, like probably like a month in,
was when he told me he had experiences using coke. And we were just kind of sharing. Like, we were in a car, we were driving back from Tybee Island down in Savannah. And I was just kind of giving him, like, my journey as a writer and just, like, setbacks that I've had. And to your point that you mentioned earlier, like, some people, their vice is sex. And so I was sharing with him how, like, at one point in my life, I was using the internet. This is before, like, the mobile apps. I was using the internet to meet guys and having sex. And it wasn't every day, but the point is I was doing it. And that was my way of trying, I guess, cope with what was happening in my life or what wasn't happening in my life. So I was sharing that with him, and so he had said to me, well, yeah, I have used coke, and he was just telling me how he had lost, like, certain jobs because of it, or opportunities because of it. And he said that he got to a point that he was just tired. He was tired of the feeling. He got tired of feeling the way that he would feel the days after. And he said he wants to live a certain life, and that wasn't the life that he wanted to live. And so I said, well, how did you know? And at this point, I'm thinking about my sister, and I'm thinking about my aunts and cousins and all of the family members that I had that had experienced drugs. And so I'm thinking, like, okay, so how do you know you're done with it, And he said, because I'm just tired. And he said, and I've repositioned myself. I've moved those people out of my life, the friends that I had that were doing that. And so I was like, okay. And slowly but surely, it just started sliding back in. Like, I started noticing things, because one thing about me, I'm from Baltimore, so I know what drug use looks like, And so I've seen enough of it, in and outside of my family. And so I just noticed that his behavior was just really just kind of erratic, and just, he would pretend like he was just having drinks. And so he would be really kind of like spaced out and like just halfway nodding. Like, we'd be out somewhere eating, like at a diner at night, like after we've done some event or some club or whatever. And he would literally just be kind of like fading, like in front of me. And I'm like, what's going on? But he would never really fess up to it and say what it was. But he would tell me how there would be instances where we would be out places, and someone would come up to him and say, you got a bump? Where the bump at? You know what I mean? And I would literally be right there, but it was so quick, or it would be so covert. And I'm just like, wow, it's interesting. I mean, to say the least. It's just like there's just a whole world that's happening that you may not even be privy to. You may not even be aware of.
Mm-hmm. I have a friend, he was addicted to cocaine really, really badly. And I didn't know. I didn't know until after the fact. He told me he was addicted to cocaine.
How long was it that you found after that you find out?
Years later.
So how did you find out? He told you?
Uh-huh. He told me. He told me that he was the same thing similar to what you were saying about your ex. He was losing jobs. He was unstable. I knew he did it. I never took time to investigate, his lifestyle or what was going on in his life to that degree. Mm-hmm. I just knew he was doing, cocaine. But years later, he told me that it was really, really bad, that he was spending his entire check on it. Mm. He would get paid, and it would be the first thing that he would buy. It was just like the top priority in his life.
So you knew he was using it, but you just didn't know that it was to the extent that it was.
I didn't know he was an addict. I thought he was just using it recreationally. Yeah.
You just never know what people are going through. Like, you really don't know what people are going through.
And like I said, I've done cocaine before. Mm-hmm. I've done it probably maybe 4 or 5 times in my life. Mm-hmm. But it was never, like, I don't know. I just don't have an addictive personality. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't get it. And I've done things, but I've never had anything just become the center of my life. Right. To that point.
And to your point, like, for me, I've used weed for probably 4 or 5 times in my life. Mm-hmm. And, like, so the same thing. It's just like, I just didn't get it. Yeah, I felt a little buzz, but it wasn't like, oh, I like this. You know what I'm saying? I just don't like because my mom smoked most of my life. And she literally just stopped like a little over a year ago.
Cigarettes?
Mm-hmm, cigarettes, yeah. And I just never liked smoke.
Do you remember those? You ever saw those Truth commercials?
Yes. I thought they were brilliant.
It worked on me.
Oh, so you used to smoke cigarettes?
For like a month.
Uh-huh. You didn't smoke cigarettes then.
I did, but let me tell you this. That was the one thing that I felt like I had an addiction to.
Really?
The only thing.
In that 1 month?
Yes. I mean, it's a month before it's 6 months. It's a month before it's a year.
Yeah.
It takes no time to become addicted to cigarettes. I know that for a fact.
So you would crave them?
Oh, yes. I was sick.
So how did you, when you stopped, you were sick?
Yeah, that's why I stopped.
So how did you, what made you smoke the first cigarette?
I was waiting tables at this restaurant, and a lot of my coworkers were smoking cigarettes so they could curb their appetite, so they could work longer periods of time.
Breaks,
exactly.
Right?
And one day I was in the break area where everyone's smoking cigarettes, and I wasn't a smoker. I had never smoked a cigarette in my life, and this girl was telling me about how it helps her focus at work, it keeps her from getting hungry. She was saying all these things about cigarettes, and she offered me a cigarette, and I took it. And I smoked it, and it did what she said it was going to do. So the next day when I'm at work, I did it again.
So do you think it did what she said it was going to do, or do you think it did it because that's what she had told you and that's what you were looking for it to do?
It's what I was looking for it to do, but it was justified. It worked
Okay.
as she said it would. It did exactly what she said it was going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And the next day at work, I did it again, and I did it again. So at the time, I was dating this guy, and he saw I was smoking cigarettes, and he was like, why don't you just buy your own? You can't keep asking people for cigarettes. And I was like, you're right.
That's encouraging.
Exactly. I bought a box of cigarettes. Next thing I know,
A
box. And I smoked the box of cigarettes
You
maybe.
mean a pack or you mean a box?
A pack of cigarettes.
Okay.
A pack. But wait, so I smoked the pack maybe in 2 or 3 days. I'm smoking a pack every 2 to 3 days of cigarettes. 'Cause I'm smoking them not just on my breaks, but after meals, with a drink. It becomes like an accessory. So the guy ends up, we go to the grocery store one night. I'll never forget. I had gotten off of work. We go to the grocery store, and he bought me a carton of cigarettes. He said, you might as well just buy a carton. They're cheaper. I literally smoked.
Was he a smoker?
No, he wasn't. I literally smoked, but he used coke. He was a coke user.
Oh.
But listen, so I smoked the cigarettes in maybe like a week and a half. So at this point, I've reached a month since I got my first cigarettes where I've completed this carton of cigarettes. Mm-hmm. And I woke up the next morning, I was out of cigarettes, and I felt like shit. I knew I needed a cigarette because they had become part of my routine. And I knew I needed a cigarette. And I remember just feeling beside myself. And he was like, you want me to go get you some cigarettes? I said, no. I said, I can't smoke any more cigarettes. He's like, why? I said, because I feel like I need it. And I know
this is
it. I said, yeah. I said, and I've never felt in my life like I needed something besides food, air, water. Mm-hmm. I was like, I know something's wrong. I went to work that day, and as soon as I walked into work, everyone was like, are you okay? Are you sick? It was just because I hadn't had a cigarette. They were like, and it was everybody at my job was coming up to me like, what's wrong? Mm-hmm. You look out of it.
Right.
And I knew it was because I needed a cigarette. And that next week was probably one of the longest weeks of my life because I knew what was wrong. I knew how to fix it. But I also knew what was wrong, and I knew how to fix it. And after that week, I was fine. But now to this day, when I smell cigarettes, it smells like the most disgusting
I
thing.
couldn't date somebody
I
that
can't
smells cigarettes.
stand
Like, I don't want to kiss you. I don't want to smell it. I remember when I didn't live in Atlanta, I remember coming down here to visit, and I had been home with my mom for some time, and I had come back to Atlanta, and I had my bag packed, and I was staying with my friend Angela, and her guest room is right by her staircase, coming from downstairs upstairs, and she was like, Craig, did you start smoking cigarettes? I know you don't smoke. I said, no, I don't smoke. What are you talking about? She said, I smell smoke. And she came into the bedroom, and she was like a damn sniff dog. You know, like she sniffed it out, and she said, it's your bag. And then when she said it, I picked it up my bag, and I could smell it. And I could literally smell the cigarettes on my clothes. I could smell it.
Where was it from?
From when I had been at home in Maryland.
Really? When you came back, it was sticking to your clothes.
It had stuck to my clothes. So I basically washed everything. And it's so crazy because that was the tipping point. But somebody had asked me like days before, you smoke? I was like, no, I don't smoke. Why'd you ask me that? But it was on the clothes that I was wearing too. Mm-hmm. But I didn't smell it because
You had been in it.
I had been in it. So I didn't really smell it. But So the guy that you were dating, he would buy you the cigarettes. Did you know he was on coke when you met him?
I knew he used coke. Yeah,
You did?
I did.
Oh, really?
We were in a relationship, so when we would I would see the little bags of coke.
Oh, really? So wait, so did you ever do it together?
No.
Oh, okay. You hadn't done it at that point.
No, I hadn't done it at
You
that
hadn't
point.
tried it.
I hadn't done it until maybe 10 years after that.
I remember the first time that I saw somebody use coke. I was actually living in LA. Mm-hmm. And it was a woman. And I think I shared this on another podcast, but I was doing this assignment for this woman. I was writing a project about strange fruit, black people getting hung from trees. And so we were working on that, and so then we just kind of were just sitting around and we were drinking like wine. Like she had red wine. And I'm not really big on red wine. There's certain red wines that I like, but I'm more of a white person, a white wine person. We were drinking the wine, and she said, "Well, let's move over here." And we ended up going upstairs to her. She had like a vanity. She basically pulled it from out of the drawer. It was in a little baggie, and she scooped it. She scooped some out on like a little file, and she sniffed it. She did two. She did one on each side. And she said, you want some? I said, no, I'm fine. But I was 35 at the time. And that was the first time I had actually seen somebody use it. And then it wasn't until probably about a year after that, a year and a half, I was at a club here, and a social media person, a gay celebrity, as I've been told they're called. Why are you looking at me like that?
Because it might be the same person who I was talking about.
We'll talk about it offline.
Okay.
We were literally sitting. It was one of these circuit parties. It was like, you know how it was that what was the restaurant up in Buckhead?
Vita.
Further up Buckhead, it was it Aria? No, behind Phipps Plaza. It was like a restaurant.
The Asian restaurant.
It was the Asian place,
yeah.
Right? Okay, so it was there. Aja. That's what it's called. And so we were, you know how packed it would be in there. And so I had to use the restrooms. I had walked over to the right to use the restroom, but it was a line. And there was like a chair, like a nice leather chair. So I sat there kind of like waiting for the line, I guess, to die down. And when I tell you, we were just sitting there chit-chatting. He was like, hey, what's up, Craig? Da-da-da. And when I tell you, he pulled out one of those same little small little baggies. And he just, right in the middle of the lobby. He didn't turn his back. He didn't try to, be inconspicuous at all. He just kind of did it. And that was when I realized that he used coke. And I looked at him and it was just like, wow. And then we later had conversations about it because I really became concerned. Because I would see him and he'd be really drunk and high. And I would tell him, I'm really kind of concerned. I just want you to be at your best. And I don't want you to, And he's like, I appreciate it. And, but I'm good. And, But I think people always think they're good, and you don't really know how bad it really is, But yeah. Thank you guys for listening. This has been So Much to Say. Subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, TuneIn, wherever you can listen to a podcast. We're there. YouTube. I didn't say that. And for more information about me, you can visit www.craigthewriterstewart.com. Thank you for listening. Be safe. Keep loving yourself. This podcast was brought to you by Words Never Spoken, a memoir by yours truly, Craig Stewart. It's available on Amazon.com, Audible.com, and all e-readers. It's more than a book. It's a movement. If you'd like to sponsor an episode of So Much to Say, visit our GoFundMe account at www.gofundme.com/so-much-to-say-podcast. Thank you.